Hey everybody, my name is Hollis and welcome back to my channel, Watercolor with me. Please don't forget to like and subscribe or comment below on what you'd like to see next. So today we are going to be working on kind of creating a nice sunset scene. So I already have some nice even washes with a dual tone transition and like a single tone transition. If you watched my last video, you know that I got a little bit of water splotches on this one, so that's why we have a little bit of this blooming happening here, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm going to kind of show you a little bit of a dual technique here. So this one's already nice and an even wash, but what if you have a base layer down and you want to create a wash on top of that, but you want it to blend and kind of create this effect? So with this painting here on the left, I'm going to go in and I'm going to use kind of a deep purple. See if I can remember what colors are on my palette. That's a green. It's been a while since I've used my little portable palette here. Right here, I think. Yeah, there we go. Got a little bit of a blue and a little bit of a purple here. So I'm going to go in with those two colors. And I still have a little bit of the orange on my palette here. So I'm just kind of creating a nice medium tone. Going back in, mixing up a decent amount because I want to make sure I have enough for what I'm doing. And I'm going in real light, so I have a good amount of water here. It's a really nice light wash. And I'm just going to go in, and just like with any gradient, you kind of pull and add the color and keep the water moving down. So when I get to a certain point, you can always see that it's going to darken that area up. But because I want it to be a soft transition instead of this hard line that I have going on, I'm going to go in with just a clean wet brush. And I am just going to go right along that bottom line a couple of times. And that's just going to make sure that area is nice and hydrated. And you can kind of see how it's already starting to pull that color down, the gradient, just a little bit more. Just kind of wet it a little bit more here. I might just coax it a tiny bit more here with a little bit more of that purple color. So that's a good way to get that transition. If you already have pigment on the page, that little bit of water just softens up that edge and helps bring it on down. I'm just going to go over it one more time, starting at the top, just because I want it to be a little richer. There we go. Ooh, I like that. Okay. A little bit richer, bringing it all the way down. That's going to help prevent any like back run of the water as well. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to let it hang out, and I'm going to work on this side. So with this one, we already have that nice gradient. It's a little bit earlier in the evening, a little earlier in the phase of sunset. We got a little bit more of a softer color. It hasn't quite turned to night sky yet. It's doing over here. And I'm just going to go in and add a couple of shapes. So I am using just a nice flat brush, so I can get a nice nice straight edge when I'm painting. And I'm just going to pick where I want my horizon to be. I'm going to go with right here. And I'm just going to go ahead and just do a dot, a line or two here, just to kind of let me know where I want my paint to, where I want things to kind of transition into the horizon line of my painting, my sight line of my painting. And so this one, we're going to make it a little bit of like a building scape. So I'm just going in, just making some nice straight lines here. Nothing too crazy. I'm going to bring the base of these down a little bit, and I'm actually going to angle it a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Maybe these buildings are a little further away. Same angle, kind of looking down the street. Some smaller buildings. I'm going to turn my brush sideways for that. Still kind of keeping a similar angle. I'm going to bring them together, why not? Do that. Go back and forth a little bit. Deepening those up a little bit more. They have a little bit of that purple on it that I'm using over here, just because shadows tend to be cooler in their tones in general, just because sunlight tends to be very bright especially in the beginning of the day. And so you get the warm light of the, or in the later part of the day, you get the warm aspect of that. So it's going to be a little bit cooler, but it's still going to have that warming aspect to it. I'm just going to do that, and I'll go in with more details on here later. Let's see, what do I want over here? Sure, we're going to have these guys go this way. So we're almost like we're looking down a street. I'm just going to do some building type things. Maybe there's a tree over there that's a little bit less specific. Go in with some more detailed lines later. Do some of that. I'm going to go in here, and I'm just going to add just some texture. Just kind of creating a little bit of a different thing. Maybe this is a city on the water. Just going to add a little bit of shadows. Just kind of creating a fun little scene here. Nothing too pertinent. I'm just making this up as I go, honestly. Going in like that. Maybe it rained recently and we're just getting that reflection on the street. Got some of that color pulling in from the side here because it was still wet when I put it down. Gonna go in with a little bit of this orange and purple still. Maybe I'll just throw a couple clouds in the sky to break up what's happening up here. Just kind of creating some difference in depth and visual balance here. I'm just lightly layering it on. A little darker than I went. Oops. Go in and pick some of that up, but I do like that purple. Okay. So we've done a little bit of that. Might add another, just a softer cloud over here. There's no rules, do what you want. We're just kind of creating the idea of what is there. And once this layer dries, we'll go in with a little bit of a darker tone and add some details, maybe a couple cars, maybe a couple silhouettes of people walking in the distance, things like that. I'm going to go in super light here and just kind of add, I feel like there should be a little bit of a mountain here. I live in a mountain town, so I'm okay if there's a little bit of a mountain shape happening back here. That's what I like. Okay, so for the other side, we're going to take a little bit of a different approach. And we're going to do almost like a tree silhouette here. So with that, I want a really nice dark color. So I'm going in with some blue and some of that same purple, but I'm also going to go in with a really dark brown. And that is going to create more of a gray tone. I might add a little bit more blue to it. There we go. And that's just going to be a nice stark contrast. You could also do this with ink, but I'm doing it with watercolor because I don't want to pick up another tool. A little lazy today. Alright, so I'm getting a nice deep color here, nice and thick. And I'm just going to go in here and just kind of create a tree line. It's a branch or a trunk of a tree here. I'm going to go in and add a couple branches. Let it do its thing, kind of let it be random here. I'll go in and do some leaves in a little bit, but at least right now we got that guy there. I'm going to go over here. Yeah, over here. Let's say maybe there's a more of a evergreen. So we're just going to kind of go back and forth, create a couple tree lines there. We got a little of that light coming through. And we're just working that paint back and forth, creating that nice deep contrast there. Going in, making sure I have enough of the brown, this purplish brown, gray, dark tone. I'm not really sure what color to call this. Burgundy? We'll go with burgundy. It's kind of a nice rich color. We're just going in, adding all of that. Add some more tree shapes, different types of trees. There's a lot of different trees out there. This one's a nice tall guy. Maybe he has, is it a spring day? Is it a fall day? you kind of figure out how many branches you want on your trees here. I'm gonna go back in. I'm painting this one like we're just kind of looking at the tops of the trees. We're not really looking at anything else over here. And I like to do, when I am working on watercolors, there are a lot of times where I will work on a couple paintings at a time, depending on the size. Just because of the dry time, I'm a little impatient, and sometimes I don't necessarily always want to use the hairdryer to dry things. One, because it's a little noisy, and two, it's kind of fun to just let the paint really do what it wants to do when you're working with it. Just going to go ahead and pick up a little bit of that extra paint here at the bottom. And another tree here. I'm just kind of creating a little bit of different heights in different areas. I can always go in later and darken it up if I really need to, because a lot of times with watercolor it does go on a little darker and dries a little lighter, as you can kind of see over here. And I did get a little water splash here, and I'm actually okay with that. I really like it. It looks like the light is reflecting off of different aspects of the street here onto some buildings. Maybe there's a little fog or something and that caught a light burst. I'm really digging it. All right. A little bump there. We'll just make that another shape, tree shape. I'll do another another type of tree here. Okay, so I'm going to let this side dry and I'm going to work on this side again now. So we've already gone in, added some clouds. I'm going to go in, add a little bit more shadow on some of these clouds, just give them a little bit more to them, a little more stuff. I'm going to just do a little tiny bit with this purple that I got going on from my other side of the painting, or the other painting. And I'm going to go in with a wet brush and I'm just going to soften. My video stopped recording for a second, but I think I picked it up right where it left off. So I did a little bit of that transition here in the clouds, and I was just starting to go in and add a little bit of like a hint of sidewalk. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And if you feel like you need to rotate your painting surface, go right ahead. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes if I get blooms on the side of the paper where I don't want them, I'll just flip the whole painting upside down and rework it that way, especially with my base layer. So I've got a little bit of a sidewalk here, got a little bit over here. Gonna go in, just add a touch of darker shade here at the edge. And with the rest of the buildings here, I might go in and with a little bit more of a purple, a little stronger purple, a little bit of that orange in there too, and just a touch of that brown. I'm going to kind of dry my brush off before going onto the paper, and I'm just going to add a little bit of shadows to these buildings. Because the part that's coming towards us, we get the sunlight coming onto the street, but because of where the light is hitting, the backs of these buildings are going to be a little darker. So I'm just going to implicate a few buildings here and there with a little bit of shadow, a little more shadow here and there. And I don't want them full, because I might put a couple trees here on the street. That happens in cities sometimes. Sometimes they like to put trees in. This morning my husband and I, we just drove around Juneau a little bit, got a little sun in, stayed in the car, let our dog run around a little bit outside in a nice secluded area. Got some nice sunny pictures to share with some friends. But we're just driving around town and I'm just looking at all the buildings. So that's kind of what inspired these paintings today. So we got a little bit of that going on. A little bit more here. I'm going to go ahead and darken and deepen that up a little bit because it's not quite the tone I'm looking for. There we go. Just adding some darker shapes. I'm not too worried if they're perfect. This is a practice. This is kind of just showing you guys how to layer paint. This isn't a typical painting for me. Add a little bit here on that sidewalk. Again. Just going to add a couple details here as well. I'm going to let that do its thing, but I'm going to go in and with those same couple colors, that dark purple, nice ultramarine blue, nice raw umber. Just getting this nice deep purple paint on my palette here. I'm just using a little travel palette, so I'm just going to go ahead and add a couple of tree stumps. And because the paint up here is nice and wet, they're just going to kind of branch out and create their own shapes, their own tree looking things. And on this side it's a little drier, so I'm just going to put the impression of leaves over on that side, and maybe there's a little guy here. A couple fire hydrants, things like that. Okay, and then on this side, because I'm using the same colors on both of these, just about, I'm going to go in with the same brush, and I'm just going to go ahead and just gently tap kind of sporadically to create these different leaf shapes, filling in the trees basically. Just gently going in, just using the brush, letting it bounce where it wants to. Same with the sky here. Just letting those leaves get filled in. You can be super precise with this if you want to. I'm just kind of going for the idea of a tree. So I'm just going in and letting these colors meld together a little bit. So you get the idea of the texture, but it's not a super specific leaf shape. Do the same thing on this guy. And you can do this in a couple different layers too. You do a nice light layer, go in with some deeper colors again, just to create a little more shadow. Trees tend to be pretty full, so do what feels right. Okay, so just nice simple, little simple swatches of color there. All right, so back over to this guy. I'm gonna work on these clouds just a touch more. They're a little, I don't know, not my normal type of cloud, but that's all right. Going in, just adding a tiny bit of color here and there. Creating some fun little shadows. Fun little shadows in the cloud there. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and put in some people silhouettes, maybe a couple car shapes. Just rough. I'm not an expert on cars. I'm not an expert on painting people. I've done portraits before. I've painted animals before. But we're just going to go ahead and do a couple shapes. Get the idea of a vehicle or two, or just something that's on the street. Get an idea of a person. A little bit of a shape here. It's going to work better as they get closer to us. Not really sure what's going on here. What's going to be a person, or making it into a car. A little easier. Just adding some different shapes. Paintings can be as abstract or as condensed and defined as you want them to be, and knowing how to use the paint and work those different layers is all going to help you out with that. So go ahead and add a little more contrast here, a little more shadow within the street a little bit. So street, I don't know if I want it to be a street or if I want it to be a canal. Maybe it's a canal. It's kind of looking more like a canal to me, so I think I'm going to turn it into a canal. These are boats now, they're not cars. Do that. Shape of the front of a boat. There we go. That's easier to paint than a car, in my mind. Front bow or something. Maybe it's a kayak. I don't know. Paint what you want. But there we go. This is just a nice simple exercise. Something to playing around with limited color palette. Pretty much I used a little bit of this really bright orange. I used a little bit of purple and a little bit of blue and brown, and those are the 4 colors that I used in this entire painting. On this side I did go in with a little bit of yellow just to kind of create that nice tone, but do whatever feels best for you. You can go in after you're done painting and after everything dries, add some ink over it. The future is up to you and how you want to paint, so enjoy and happy painting, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.